And welcome back to the Daily Dribble podcast, guys. As always, I'm your host, Nick Zammit. Thrilled to be back well on the road to season 2024-2025. As I've alluded to over the course of the last couple of weeks, all the on-court action is over. The NBA season, the NBL season, the Olympics, they've all come and gone. We're now looking purely towards the upcoming season. And last week I touched on some of the NBA's most untouchable players for their respective franchises. Now, I'll get in a little bit more to what that means shortly, but I've got part 2 of that series coming up today. Very much looking forward to getting into that momentarily. Got some very quick odds and ends to rattle through as well. But first and foremost, a big shout out to both Stadium Scene and The Cover. Those two networks continuing to showcase all of my work here at the Daily Dribble, as well as a whole host of other content creators in and around Australia, New Zealand, the US, and Canada. Without further ado, guys, I really want to get into things today. So let's rip through some very quick odds and ends and start first and foremost with the news that Jonathan Kuminga is seeking a $224 million max contract extension from the Warriors. Now, Kuminga's 21 years of age. Last season averaged 16 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 assists on 53% from the field. Played his third season. It was solid without being exceptional. Now, that is a lot of money, and more money is being thrown at players across the league. But $224 million, I think he's a quality player. I think he's probably he's certainly one of the best young prospects the Warriors have at their disposal at the moment. But he's going to have to do a lot of work to justify that sort of money. I think this year for him is a real kind of almost a bit of a make or break year. With Clay departing to Dallas there, someone's going to have to step up. Great. They've, acquired Kyle Anderson, Buddy Hield, players like that. Steph Curry's going to do Steph Curry things. But for them, it's really key. Moody and Kuminga in particular, I don't know. I think he's good without being exceptional. And I think to warrant $224 million, you've got to be closer to that exceptional range than good. But I'm going to be keeping very close tabs on Kuminga this season. Hopefully he can justify that sort of money. But I think this is the make or break year to kind of determine whether he's a franchise player or not. In other news, the Philippines Basketball Association has introduced a 4-point line for their new season. Now, I want to pose this to you guys. How about if the NBA adopted this? Steph Curry, Luka Doncic, players like that would just absolutely run amok. Me personally, I don't know about it. I think the game is already absolutely bombarded with threes. There would be no incentive to ever go inside the paint. And it kind of becomes a very one-dimensional game. Me personally, I'm happy with the 3-point line. Well and truly, that's enough for me. But what do you guys think? Should the NBA adopt the 4-point line? Let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear. I just feel as if, as I said, the game is, you look at the last 10 to 20 years, the game is driven by 3-point shooters now. Even big men have to be able to shoot threes. We look at Embiid, Jokic, players like that. If we go even further and introduce a 4-point line, as I said, what is the incentive? The DeMar DeRozans of the world who really operate in that mid-range, and he's going to die out very, very quickly. So for me personally, I wouldn't like to see it, but hit up the socials this week, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok. Let me know your thoughts. Should the NBA adopt a 4-point line? I'll probably put up a reel about that one during the week. So yeah, be sure to let me know your thoughts, guys. And on the topic, a big shout out to all of you guys for continuing to hit up the socials. A lot of people during the week had mixed reviews of my untouchable players. They certainly took it with a grain of sand. They had contrasting opinions, but also, a lot of people were on board with what I had to say. So certainly appreciate all your thoughts and feedback there. Very excited to hear what you think of this week's. In other odds and ends news, free agent Javonte Green is finalizing a 1-year deal to join the New Orleans Pelicans. Averaged 12 points, 7.5 rebounds at 60%, should I say, from the field last season. Granted, he only played 9 games. Very small sample size there for the Bulls. But at 31 years of age, I think Green is got quite a bit to offer, and I think fits really nicely with this Pelicans team. He's not quite a like-for-like Larry Nance. Like, I'm pretty high on Larry Nance, but losing him to the Hawks, Green coming in, I think fills that void as good as you probably could have hoped for. So he's hoping a big season there for him. And the Sacramento Kings, I put something up during the week that they're going to work out Isaiah Thomas, Lonnie Walker IV, Juan Toscano Anderson, and Tony Bradley to fill a roster spot this week. Now, as I mentioned, I put something up during the socials, a bit of a poll as to who you guys wanted to see get that spot. Probably a little bit to the surprise me. I thought Isaiah Thomas might have gained a couple more votes. But you guys gave Lonnie Walker the nod. He averaged 10 points, 2 rebounds, and an assist last season. I think would certainly, warrant a spot on a lot of rosters within the league. But the Kings might be the one that secure him. We'll be sure to keep you guys posted on how that one plays out, who gets the rights to a spot on the Kings roster that will hopefully, with that acquisition of DeMar DeRozan, be pushing for a playoff spot once again. Guys, there wraps up odds and ends for another week. Let's push ahead.
Daily Dribble.
Okay, so last week I had a segment that I dubbed the Untouchables. If you guys haven't already seen it, be sure to go back and watch that one, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or check it out if you want to see this mug on YouTube. Go watch it there. These, for me, untouchable players are essentially players that, who, for their respective franchises, shouldn't ever be mentioned in trade talks. These are the players that you want to build around, that you have to keep by any means necessary. So it's not always necessarily the best player on a roster, which might or might not be the case today. But it's the player that you should build around. And I'm very excited to hear. I think there will be some potentially mixed thoughts on who I've selected today. So looking forward to hearing what you guys think there. Firstly, from the Orlando Magic, I've got Paolo Banchero. Now, the Magic have certainly been on the up over the course of the last few seasons. They've been a real bright spark, and it's really no coincidence that that's coincided with Banchero becoming a legitimate star within the league. The Magic are in an absolutely fantastic spot at the moment with some of the young players that they have at their disposal. Jalen Suggs, Franz Wagner, Cole Anthony, Anthony Black. These guys are really, really talented, all in their own right. But Banchero is absolutely the guy. If you're saying otherwise, you're delusional. And a little case could be made maybe for Wagner, but Banchero is the star there. Last season, he averaged 22.5 points, 7 rebounds, 5.5 assists, and 1 steal per game. Was named as an all-star for the first time in just his second season in the league, and just had all the swagger befitting of a superstar player. His output and efficiency in all major categories increased incredibly from year one. He became just the 8th player in league history to amass 3,000 points, 1,000 rebounds, and 700 assists over his first 2 seasons within the league. For me, it's I think, really scary to see what his ceiling could be. Now, for me, he's probably not a guy who's really spoken about enough in terms of the best young players within the league. We often speak about Ja. We often speak about, Zion, Luka, some of these other big names kind of taking over the league, even Tatum to a lesser extent, getting a little bit older now. But Banchero is not a guy that's probably put in that same category, but he ought to be. As I said, 22.5 points, 7 rebounds, 5.5 assists in your second season within the league, becoming an all-star, guiding this team that's really had a pretty bleak decade to the playoffs is fantastic. And I think a huge part of Orlando's success over the next 5 to 10 years will be predicated on how good Banchero becomes. And to be honest, my guess is pretty bloody good. I think they've got all the steps there in place to not only be a bit of a threat now, but also moving forward. Adding KCP in this offseason, going to be really exciting to see how deep they can go for the 2024-2025 campaign. But moving ahead, as I said, a lot of young, talented players there. Banchero is the guy you want to keep happy and to build around. Let's move ahead to my second team, the Portland Trail Blazers. The guy I've given the nod to, and I think this will kind of surprise a few people, is Shadon Sharp. Now, I found this one super difficult to pick. Denny Adviar, Scoot Henderson, Anthony Simons, all had merit to them, I think. And, it's I kind of mulled over this one for quite a while. I've given the nod to Sharp, though. Played 32 games last season, which isn't ideal. He averaged 16 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. I'm largely basing this pick, though, on the fact that what he showed over his last 10 games is more what I believe he can turn into. Now, across those last 10 games that he played, he averaged 23.7 points per game, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, with a shooting slash of 46, 37.8, and 77.3% from the line. That's a phenomenal clip. And granted, it's a 10-game sample size. Read into it what you will. For me, Scoot probably has more of a chance of being a good player in the league. But I think Sharp's ceiling might be just that little bit higher. And, if you want to build around a guy, if you want an untouchable player, I think you've got to go with the guy that's potentially got the higher ceiling. And for me, that is Sharp. He's shown incredible bounce and flashes of tough shot making, which for me is considerably more than Scoot has shown. Granted, being the number 2 overall pick last year, he had a pretty poor campaign. Now, I think the Blazers have an incredibly long road back to being relevant once again. But for me, I think their best bet is to have Sharp as the guy they put their effort into. I think Simons is probably the best player on the team at the moment. But with injury concerns and, again, has hot and cold flashes, I wouldn't be putting too much stock into him. Granted, he's older as well. Shadon Sharp is the guy for me in Portland, and I think that this will get probably mixed reviews. A lot of people might even have Denny Adviar, who had a bit of a breakout campaign last year with the Washington Wizards. But I'm still going as that highest upside potential. I think Sharp is the guy. Interested to see what you guys think of that one there. The third player I've got from the Indiana Pacers, Tyrese Halliburton. Now, the Pacers are absolutely littered with young stars at the moment. Andrew Nembhard, Aaron Naismith, Benedict Mathurin, Obi Toppin, and Isaiah Jackson. That is a pretty star-studded young roster they've got there who are playing beyond their years. Halliburton is absolutely the cornerstone piece, though. Unlike the Sharp one where I had to and fro a little bit between Denny, Scoot, Simons there, this one was pretty clear-cut. Until injury hampered him last season, he was absolutely the star point guard within the league. He averaged 20 points, 4 rebounds, and 11 assists, plus over a steal a game as well. And for me, he was just unstoppable. And what are we now? We're a couple of years into the Pacers being a formidable force. Again, kind of like Banchero, it's coincided with Halliburton becoming a star. They are now a genuine threat in the East, the Pacers, and probably one of the fan favorite teams within the league, I think. They play a really exciting brand of basketball. They get up and down the court. And with this young point guard leading the charge, they are must-watch TV. Now, as I said, hamstring troubles and back spasms certainly slowed him down last season. Across the first 32 games of last season, I just want to read out where he was at. Prior to going down with hamstring trouble, he was averaging 24 points on 49.6% from the field, 40.4% from 3, and 86.8% from the 3-point line. They are incredible shooting splits. He was going at 12.7 assists per game at just 2.5 turnovers per game as well for a guy handling the rock a lot. In anyone's language, that is elite. And I believe that's the level of player he is. A lot of people at the moment, I've been seeing a lot of reports about this and a lot of different podcasts and kind of NBA pundits out there calling Halliburton a star, bordering between star and superstar. I've got no doubt in my mind he's a superstar player, a franchise player, a cornerstone player, The Pacers need to keep him happy at all costs. Long-time listeners of the show will know what a big fan I am of his. I think he's an absolute stud. And for the Pacers' success moving forward, he has to remain untouchable. You want to keep a lot of these other young guys. You want to keep Siakam, Miles Turner. As I said, those names, Nembhard, Naismith, Mathurin, Toppin, Jackson. Keep them all happy. If they've got to go, they've got to go, though. Halliburton is the guy that you hitch this carriage to, and let's see how far it goes. But big fan there. Halliburton is the guy in Indiana. My fourth player from the Houston Rockets is Alperen Sengun. Now, again, this for me essentially came down to a bit of a coin flip. Jalen Green or Alperen Sengun. Green, for me, he has shown flashes of being elite. Across the season, he averaged nearly 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 3.5 assists per game. During March, though, he looked like a fully fledged centerpiece, averaging 27.7 points on 49, 41, and 76.5% shooting splits over 15 contests in March. He snared the Western Conference Player of the Week, and to be honest, as I said, looked like a bona fide superstar. That being said, I have more faith in Sengun being a bigger positive from a team's perspective. And to be perfectly honest, probably from an individual standpoint as well. He himself averaged 21 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, and went at nearly 54% from the field last season. The way I kind of see it, and I was actually fortunate enough to watch quite a bit of Houston basketball last season. Green is more of an ignitable scorer who can get fiery often, but often struggles with that inefficiency side, and besides buckets, doesn't offer too much. Sengun is a centerpiece player who I think makes those around him better. Finished third in most improved voting last season, and I think it might arguably be another bit of a hot take, maybe to some. But should the Rockets continue their merry way up the standings and becoming a more formidable team within the West, I think Sengun has the makings of a future MVP. Alperen Sengun, I think, will, across the course of his career, I don't know if he'll quite win it, but I reckon he'll be a top 3 vote getter at some point throughout his career in MVP voting. That being said, as like many of these teams, I'd be keeping both these players, Green and Sengun, if I could. But for me, if you've got to choose one or the other, Alperen Sengun is the guy in Houston. Fifth and finally, from the Cleveland Cavaliers, I've got Evan Mobley. Now, I think this might surprise a lot of people. Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Jarrett Allen are probably the guys that came to mind firstly for you guys out there. I've gone Mobley, though. Now, I think Allen is solid without being incredible. Garland is not only older, he's more expensive, has injury concerns and a tendency as well to run hot and cold. Donovan Mitchell is the guy. Now, he's the star of this team, no doubt. There's no qualms in my mind that he's the guy. They will go as far as Donovan Mitchell takes them at the moment. But with how strong the potential trade talk is, I just couldn't look past it, to be honest. With all this talk at the moment, if you were to move on, you would get a hell of a package back for Mitchell. Granted, he's older as well on a massive contract. I just couldn't look past the trade talk. And as I said, you could get back a hell of a package if you just want to kind of restart afresh, build around these young guys. Fair play. You get rid of those 3 and it leaves Mobley. Now, injuries hampered him quite a lot last season. Didn't quite make the jump that many expected he would. Granted, he still averaged 16 points, 9.5 rebounds, 3 assists, plus a steal and a block per game. The thing that I love about him is he has elite potential on the defensive end. Like, he is just everywhere. His size and speed, he's able to guard 1 through 5, and it's just super exciting to watch. As I mentioned, his offense hasn't quite erupted just yet, but his stat sheet, though, showed several spikes from the season prior to this year. His shooting splits of 58% from the field, 37.3% from three, and 72% from the line were all personal bests for him. I think with another year of growth under his belt, he's going to become one of, if not the best two-way player within the league. And if it was me in the front office, he's the guy I would build around for your future. As I said, all those other names I mentioned, Allen, Garland, Mitchell, they've all got concerns around them. And as I said, Mitchell might be the star. He's the star at the moment for as long as he's playing on the Cleveland Cavaliers. He is the guy. That being said, he's not untouchable. There's already been a lot of trade talks surrounding him. Mobley is the guy that I think you want to invest in for the future. And as I said, with the two-way potential he has, he could be one of the best players within the league. In a couple of years' time, we could be looking at Evan Mobley as by far the best two-way player in the league. So just think something to think of there if you're a Cleveland fan. Guys, to recap my untouchable players part 2, from the Orlando Magic, I had Paolo Banchero. From the Portland Trail Blazers, I had Shadon Sharp. From the Indiana Pacers, Tyrese Halliburton. From the Houston Rockets, Alperen Sengun. And from the Cleveland Cavaliers, I had Evan Mobley. Guys, would love to hear your thoughts on this one. I've gone through 10 players over the course of the last 2 weeks who I deem as untouchable. I'm sure a lot of you might agree with me. A lot of you might disagree. But that is all part of the fun of doing it. So let me know on the socials this week. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok. Let me know what I got right. Let me know what I got wrong. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to the podcast. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or if you're watching this one on YouTube, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to get the latest episodes as soon as they drop. Plan for next week is I'm, at this stage, looking to run a little mailbag episode. So all you guys out there who have been hitting me up with your questions and thoughts, drop them in again this week. Hit me up on those socials that I alluded to a moment ago. If you've got any questions whatsoever around the NBA, the NBL, even anything related in life, just any question you want answered, I will be tackling it next week on the show. Again, I'll put up a couple of things on the socials. So if you have any questions you want answered, I'm going to tackle anything and everything next week. For me, these are always some of my favorite episodes to do, the mailbag episodes, because as I say, you guys really do make the show. So would love to hear any of your qualms at the moment. Just quickly in other news as well, NBL content is going to be ramping up very, very soon, putting some things in place to do a little couple of collaborations with other pages out there. They're going to be joining me on this podcast. I'm going to be joining them on their podcast. So the NBL content will certainly be ramping up as well. Nevertheless, let's leave it at that for this week, guys. Have a tremendous week. Enjoy another week without basketball. But again, it's another week closer to the start of the 2024-2025 season for both the NBA and NBL. Till next week, though, guys, have a fantastic week, and I'll speak to you very soon. Take care.